Hey, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Hemmings Hot Rod BBQ podcast. On this episode, we have professional mixed martial artist, avid automotive enthusiast, the Warmaster himself, Josh Barnett. Sir, how are you doing today?
I'm just slightly fresher than my coffee this morning, but nobody said anything about barbecue. I don't know how this is going to work. If you're going to digitally Grubhub me some ribs.
Dude, we're still trying to figure that one out. Because when we first started this, I was like, this is going to be great. I'm like, and we were actually talking about that. We're like, we can Grubhub somebody a little bit of whiskey, a little bit of barbecue, and then do this. But then it got to the point where we're like, well, what if we record shows at 8 a.m., which I personally don't have a problem with.
Yeah.
But the company was like, that's probably a bad idea. And I was like, I didn't see it that way. But again, not my decision. So, But
I know something that goes really well with barbecue, and that would be the whiskey that I produced, Warbringer, and the single barrel stuff, Warmaster edition, mesquite smoked, bourbon, sherry cask finished, and with a incredible smoky punch to it. It's almost like having barbecue in your mouth as it is.
So I want to get more into that in a minute or two, but I want to talk about. Most people obviously know you as mixed martial artist, as an athlete. You've been a fighter for a long time. I don't know how many people know you as a real avid automotive enthusiast who wrenches on cars, builds stuff, races. Like, you've pretty much done a lot of stuff in the automotive world.
That would be my dad's fault. He got me into this whole hobby at a young age with a restoration project that he did with my mom, and that family had to chip in and help out here and there. But the 66 GT Fastback Mustang, and seeing all of that come together, and just now they built something more towards the show car end of things. I mean, it wasn't the trailer queen by any means, and it didn't compete in concourse, but it won. Yeah, it won quite a few awards at the Mustangs Northwest Roundup, which is one of the biggest Ford Mustang roundups or get-together shows in the world. And it has won awards at that. But my dad always had a hankering for the racing side of things, and so even then, he added nitrous to the 66 and
to the show car.
And things of that nature. It's, try and make it go faster, of course, as always is the want, which then led to my mom being like, that's enough of trying to take the car down the track after you broke the motor mount and dented the beautiful original hood that was such a pain in the ass to paint in the first place. My dad painted the car too. So then it was get a race car. And my dad would, he'd find something, and we had this 64 Falcon Futura that ran in the 12s for forever, and it was just as reliable as could be. All you ever had to do was adjust the valves, check tires, fluids. That's it. Thing just ran. As the battery charged, you're good.
And it ran 12s.
It would run 12. Yeah, it had a 3. I think it had a 30. Did we run a 302 in it? I think we were running a 351 Windsor.
Okay.
Something. It wasn't like the craziest build. It had iron heads on it. But yeah, it ran 12, 15, like all day long. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing how we talk about, like, when we were kids, you had a 12-second car, you were cooking. Like, that was fast. And now you've got stuff out there that's running, 9 seconds at, 950s, 970s from the factory. And you're like, what?
No, it's impressive. If you really think about it, we're living in the fastest hot rod age it's ever been by far. I mean, we are so much faster than the classic cars, if only just for tire technology, right? Like those old bias plies were no good on those big torque motors of the late 60s, early 70s. Like, it just, they weren't a good combination. But even then, there was tweaks that you had to do to get those cars to really run at their best. And it's funny because it's like, little things like the GSX Stage 2 or whatever is the fastest street car, and everyone's like, what about the Hemi and the all this is like, no, the other one is faster, but
yeah.
even then, and then it's, you know, then it comes down to like, what do you do to these cars as well, right? You know,
Yeah.
you got to think of these things as building blocks. And it's also crazy to think of is that even these insane factory 9-10 second cars, you can still look at them as a building block mentality. And that's wild, right? I mean, it's one thing to, if you ended up with a bone stock Boss 429, like a 70, right?
Yep.
You, to really get that car to really hustle, you'd have to, you know, you'd have to be tweaking it a bit, in ways which would, you know, destroy the collectability value of it if you're a concourse type guy. But boy, would you really get something out of your car.
Right.
And I remember there was a kid, and I do mean kid, he was probably like 21, 22, and he had a 69 Boss 429, put nitrous on it, would you know, run around town in this bad boy, take it to the tracks. He really tried to launch it once and shredded his lugs because they were stock. So had to fix that and all these different things. And the car was absolutely gorgeous and incredible, but you know, the car was used for driving, and that's the thing, is you want to get behind the wheel and you want to drive these things. But not to get too far off, a 12-second car is pretty quick. Yeah. And even just trying to, you know, it's like non-hot rod people, non-racers, and trying to get them to understand that a 400 horsepower car that is dialed in right is fast. And I remember sitting passenger seat in that 12-second Falcon, and I remember when he's doing his little warm up down they open up like the return lane so people can do some like little warm up laps and stuff like that. And he just, you know, stab it a little bit. And I can remember the feeling of being set back in the chair. Yeah. And the noise and the violence of even just a 12-second car. And nowadays these kids can go buy a 12-second Mustang right off the showroom floor and have no idea what they're doing with it.
I you know, those cars back in the day, and I mean, you and I still really appreciate them. They taught me how much to respect the actual pilot behind the wheel, the driver behind the wheel, right? Because somebody can come up and be like, I've got a 12-second car or a 10-second car. It's like, well, the car might be capable of doing that, but you as the driver are absolutely not. Like, I've got friends that are like, this car will run 10 seconds. I'm like, not with you behind the wheel, it won't.
True. Yeah.
Right. And I think that it taught me to really pay attention to what a good driver is and how they perform behind the wheel and what their technique was. Where now, like, listen, the fact is anybody can go buy, you know, any all-wheel drive Tesla or any all-wheel drive muscle car, whatever the case is, and they could go out and run 10 or 11s, and all they literally have to do is flat foot it and hold the wheel straight, right? But if you're talking about a burly rear-wheel drive, high horsepower car, manually shifted, like, there's so much technique, especially at the strip, whether you're cutting a light is a master class in itself to do that right. Yeah.
So tons of careers have been utterly made or lost on how your lights are. And I understand that a lot of folks are not going to get that deep into it, you know, even to the point of, you know, seriously bracket racing or anything like that, which is totally fine. But you do bring up a point with not even just, of course, you've got the all-wheel drive example, right? Like your GTRs and these things, you know, and the computers around the whole system towards allowing you to safely deploy all that horsepower and everything is all just right there. But even the rear-wheel drive cars, that's still a big factor with traction control and all these retarding systems, retarding the timing and bringing everything back down, and all doing it by computer control.
Right.
So people will see like my 09 GT500 and they're like, oh yeah, I'd love to drive it. Let me drive it. Like, no, you're not driving this car. I call it the 30-30 machine. 30 seconds or 30 feet, you've wrapped this thing around a pole because you don't know what you're doing. I don't have traction control in this car anymore. 700 to the wheels is a whole hell of a lot to deal with, and it can happen real fast.
That's right. And that car is so analog, right? That was really that generation, that the S197, like that body style, was still solid live axle in the rear, right? Even though it's in the 21st century, that's a very, very analog machine.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because people, like you said, a lot of people think that now they just rely on those electronics. But 700 horsepower at the wheels, people have no comprehension of how much power that actually is, right? If you look at somebody and be like, I'll get wheel spin at third gear at 90 miles an hour. People go, no, that's not possible. You're like, well, you've never driven in a car like this then. You have no
That's
concept,
true.
right?
No, they don't have any idea. And there's nice things about using the throttle by wire fuel injection and different stuff. It can, and especially if people are using these automatic cars, these automatics are shifting quicker and tighter than they ever have, right? And you can just jump in this car and start it and start going down the street right off the bat. No big deal. At least with my car being a stick, it's like, okay. I mean, it's got it's got a twin disc clutch in it, and it's a hydraulic clutch setup, so it's way more manageable than even my old '04 Terminator, which still has a stock clutch in it. I don't know how I managed to keep that thing alive for as long as it has that clutch. But it's a leg workout from the factory. That clutch, it's non-hydraulic. It is heavy as shit. But anyways, you start the friction material on the clutch in my '09. It's aggressive. It's not going to rattle your teeth out, or really, if you know how to drive it, it's no big deal. It's not even anywhere near the most aggressive street clutches or race clutches. But I know that as soon as someone starts trying to row the gears in this thing, they're going to screw it all up. And the thing is, if they even add even a bit of power, as soon as that hits that clutch, it just grabs and goes.
Right.
And people, that's what shocks people, right? Like that sudden climb. That's why those old Porsche turbos, the Widowmakers from the 80s.
Oh yeah.
Because that turbo lag, it sits there and just it's nothing, and
then the light switch.
Yeah.
It's funny. We were actually talking about that, and I feel super, super fortunate to grow up in the era that I did, which was learning how to drive in kind of the mid 80s, where we still had everything was still for the most part carbureted. We had all the muscle cars, but we were at that point in time where things were shifting to EFI, right? It was that kind of big transition. Turbos were just starting to come up. And when we say the term turbo lag now to anybody under 40, it's odds are they don't really know. They know the phrase turbo lag, but they don't know what turbo lag actually is, or they don't know what it feels like. To your point, like I have a buddy that had a 930, and I remember driving that thing, and it was like up to 4,500 RPM. There was nothing. And then boost kicked in, and I was like, holy shit, because it was literally, it was like driving a 2-stroke dirt bike, like a big bore 2-stroke, like a 500cc dirt bike.
H1, right? H2, Kawasaki's.
Yep. Yeah, man. And that turbo lag is vanished, right? I mean, cars today, nobody knows. Like a new turbo 911, people are like, well, it's got no turbo lag. It's like, well, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, they went to what? I guess your one solution was you'd run twin turbo setups that could feed off of each other and reduce lag. Yep. And then, of course, the way that they can tune the cars these days and fine-tune the cams and everything about wherever that these sweet spots are, that turbo lag is really diminished. Hell, my diesel Mercedes SUV I drive all the time, like what you could constitute turbo lag is real minimal. It does have a little tiny, if you stomp it, it takes a second to really kick over. Yeah. But it's nothing. And that's in a diesel. Right. I mean, that's just in a diesel get around car. And it is, it's really impressive. I can go and get almost 30 miles, over 30 miles of the gallon combined on a road trip just around LA, as long as I don't get traffic abused too much. But, and have a nice little turbo there, just bringing those RPMs up, putting a little kick down. But that early stuff, I remember the first real fuel injected car I ever saw was an 85 Mercury Marquis. My dad was driving. Had a little 2-barrel fuel injection with the little pods that was hang over. That's the top and squirt down.
Little squirters.
And
Yep.
that was factory. Yeah.
No, well, so do you enjoy, I mean, you've obviously you've gotten behind the wheel of so many new vehicles as well. Do you have like do you gravitate towards the older stuff, the more analog stuff, or do
It's
you
way more
like or
fun. It's
yeah,
way more
okay, I
fun.
agree.
The old
Yeah.
stuff is way more fun. It's simpler. Although it's interesting. When you really think about the way the systems are designed, yes, it's far simpler. But through the internet, with YouTube and forums, and even just being able to get documentation for
Yeah.
instructions or whatever, right? You know, even
Yeah.
as you order a part to put on your car, you can go to that manufacturer and download so you've got all this wealth of information in which to tool on your cars. And I have to be honest, with even the complex computer systems that are involved these days, with the tuning systems that they use,
Yeah.
like the handheld tuners and other guys that will sell you the tunes over the net. You know, there's plenty
Sure.
of good tuners that way. And then the dyno tuning, if you can get a hold of it, man, it can be really easy to work on these cars. But I think it is a little bit of an illusion in that you're only dealing with the surface of things. And so if something should really go sideways, and you have to get deeper into any of that, and especially if you got to mess with any of the code.
That's a great point.
Deeper parts of your tuning, then yeah, I mean, but at least there's always the option of setting it all back to factory with your handheld tuner and starting all over again, potentially. Yeah, I mean, as long as that doesn't totally fry something, because you did something wrong, but like, you know, leave you with a burnt fuel pump or something.
Right. So let me ask you. So when your family built this the Mustang when you were younger, then you started getting into mixed martial arts, right, and becoming a professional fighter and trainer and things like that. How did that come about? How did that career start?
I just saw it on television. I basically, I was a sophomore in high school, saw a tape of UFC 2 not even long after it had happened, and I was hooked. It was the first one I ever saw. I'd heard about it, and I just thought, oh, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. This is like every awesome movie I love and every video game I play and all the pro wrestling I watched. So yeah, I can't think of anything cooler, more competitive, more worthwhile than doing something like that.
So when you first saw that, right? And I mean, back then, we were looking at, I mean, like WWF was huge, right? When you saw that, like compare like mixed martial arts fighting to MMA to WWF, did you look at WWF or the wrestling and be like, no, and then mixed martial arts, you said that's real, that's where was that like, how did you?
There's a little bit of that, but I also really got into the Japanese wrestling, which has a lot more overlap with MMA, especially in the training. And there were organizations over there that were really proto mixed martial arts organizations. And so as I find out about the UFC, I find out more about these other things. And then I go back and start checking them out. And it's like, oh, wow, okay, well, this stuff has actually been hanging around a lot longer than I expected. And then there were the tapes coming out of Brazil of events that were down there, and also events that had happened prior. So or that you wouldn't have known about, but you go through these tape trading circuits, or if you go to the right rental stores, like, oh, what's a Brazilian Ballet Tudo? I gotta watch this. What's Gracie in action? So this whole world is opening up in the realm of mixed martial arts as an international sport. And one of the things I wanted to do was see the world. So this was a really convenient way to do it. Go and explore all these different cultures and rich countries and peoples, and then beat them up.
There you go. Right.
Was also to pay for your auto habits, right?
Right.
You have a car, you have a job to pay for your car. So that's what it came down to. Although I had always wanted to buy a 67 GT500 Night Mist Blue, and you could get them from in between like 25 to 45,000 complete all day long for a point in time. I know people
Right.
are gonna like, what, wait? And even then, a $45,000 GT500, that was like pristine, perfect.
Right.
And people are like, oh God, that's a ton of money to pay for something like that. And the year I had enough money to finally make that dream come real, I go looking on the internet, just browsing as we do. And I'm like, what the hell? 150,000? That's nuts.
Yeah.
200,000? What are you talking
Yeah.
about?
What
This is
happened? Wait a
insane.
minute.
Like,
Yeah.
how are all these people this absolutely crazy? Like, I know people like to get stupid with their pricing. You know, we all know the meme of, price is firm. I know what I've got.
Yeah, of course.
No tire kickers, no low ballers.
Yeah.
But I just, every listing I see through the roof, and I'm like, this is nuts. And I keep digging, and then I find out that was the year that Barrett Jackson opened up to muscle cars. That black GT500 went for like 200 and some odd thousand, and every single car went through the roof. And I was just like, one, let's burn Barrett Jackson to the ground.
Yeah.
And two, after I do that, can I get my GT500
Right.
again?
Yeah, exactly. How do I get away with this?
So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's love hate in terms of the whole premium auction thing, because in one sense, in one way of looking at it, it ruined the hobby. Totally ruined the hobby.
Yeah.
And another side of it, it injected a ton of wealth opportunity into people's lives that had never known such a thing.
Right.
So now all of a sudden your car isn't just a time capsule of your love, or even just like, something that it cost you far more time than it cost you money, but it still cost you, to now it's, oh my God, I might have something that is worth 10 times what I put into this. And
man, I think
I see it on both ways, because I've been able to flip cars and play with this hobby, and I see the injection of new technology into the hobby that we've all really benefited from. I mean, all the Dynacorn stuff wouldn't probably be around to the level it is without this aftermarket that exists. But at the same time, the real engines are hard to come by anymore. Any like factory from those cars stuff is rare or destroyed, or piecemeal at best. Whereas because people either they all had to have them for all that numbers matching. And you see that's a side I think that actually been destructive to the business, is the whole numbers matching, car flipping side of things, because it's not the you and I, or even the hobbyist that doesn't have the luxury of some of the relationships that we've built up from our working in the industries that we do. Your regular shade tree mechanic, he's out. Totally. Because those aren't the guys who are out there. Oh yeah, I know my buddy's got some of these parts from that. No, it is giant investors, massive, funds going towards securing all these vehicles, paying more than Joe Schmo can pay for them, and then elevating this whole thing through the roof outside of their reach. So I mean, it's all pluses and minuses. There's always trade-offs to everything, but yeah, it's an interesting conundrum, right? Because you're getting benefits at the same time you're having deficits.
It's difficult at times, because like I look at I'm fortunate that I've got my two cars, but I've had them for almost 20 years. 20 years ago, they were affordable. I literally couldn't afford the cars that I already own. Now, I just couldn't.
Chargers you have are absolutely through the roof at this point. You can't even build it. If you just wanted to buy a low buck econo version that they had put out, let's say a 68 Charger that, did they ever come
18?
With 6? Or did they ever come with a 6? Something like that. With a column shift and all this stuff. They did. 3 on the tree. Non-desirable. But what's crazy is someone will go, oh, there's only a one of one straight six or slate 6 with an air conditioning unit that doesn't work and it has to have a bit. It's like, no one wants that car. Why did you just now make all of these cars like $400,000 or something crazy? No one, because you have to have a museum spec vehicle
That's
doesn't even have
terrible,
any
by the way.
fluid in it. Yeah, it doesn't even have any fluid in it, and it has technology that sucks
Well, that's
anymore.
dude, I tell people this all the time. I'm like, if you have ever driven a bone stock muscle car, for the most, they're fast and they're fun, but they're also pretty terrible. Like they don't stop, they don't turn. Like if you got drum brakes, you'll stop good one time and that's it. But like they're not. I look back over the last 20 years of what I've done to my personal cars to make them into something that's decent or that I consider decent, right? And it was funny. I had gone to look at, I was down in LA a couple of weeks ago for a conference, and I went to look at a bone stock 1970 Challenger 318 small block car. And it was a nice little car. And I got in it and I drove it. And I was like, I don't want this. I was like, I just don't want this for the money that he was asking. And you get into your head, well, it's an e-body, it's going to be worth this and be that. But for me, there was no driving experience there that was worth the amount of money that the owner was asking. And I think the older I get, when I go to look at a car, I think about purchasing a car or even driving a car, it's not so much what is the resale. It's what is this is this X amount of dollars, does it equate to this good of a driving experience?
Yeah. Also the context at which you're going to look at this car. So I do have a soft spot for old cars, classics. I've driven them as daily drivers. And like I used to drive a 69 F-250 Ford Explorer, which was a camper truck that they would sell. It had a 390 4-speed, and it was just the smoothest thing. Is every gear is click, 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 and just humming along. And of course, it's not great on gas, but there is something to those older engines. Like I said, they're easier to work on. They're much simpler, but when they run, boy, they run nice. And these modern engines is not to say that they don't run well as well, because they make more horsepower on average.
They're more efficient.
Through efficiency and fuel direct injection, all this kind of stuff. But there's just something nice about driving a classic car for the sake of driving it. But then you've got to weigh all the stuff about like, okay, well, if I'm going to drive it all the time, these brakes better be solid. And you can do drum brakes so that it stops pretty fast, but you need to know what you're doing, and you're going to have to get down there and you're going to have to go through them, check all your your valves and everything in there, and make sure that everything's expanding as it should. And actually maybe even upgrading the shoes that you use on it to have a bit more grip, and have the drums been turned down too many times? Is there any material left on them? All this, you got to go through it all. And most people, even if they had the money to do it, time is hard to find.
I think it's difficult. I mean, I used to drive, and I think you saw it. Do you remember my Monte Carlo, my old?
Are you kidding me? I was the guy who got you to buy the 204R.
That is absolutely correct.
And that car was awesome. It sucks what happened, but that was a great driver. That car was so awesome.
That was the best old car I've ever owned. I have ever owned. And it was interesting because I remember talking to you about that, and it was we were talking about like, okay, well, what would it take to break this 72 Monte into a great daily driver? And overdrive trans, like put a 200 R4 in it, man. Get a nice small block, not something that's crazy high strung. Use a new fuel injected system, which is exactly what we didn't reinvent the wheel, right? Just made a great older vehicle that you could drive every day with some new technology. Again, not over the top technology by any means. And it was brilliant. So I think the biggest fear now I have with stuff like that is exactly what happened to me.
Yeah.
It got stolen. And I fear that anybody that wants to experience, like I'm so fortunate, I feel so fortunate that I was able to experience that. But I feel bad for people that can't experience that, who want to, because it really is such a wonderful thing to do. You were able to do it.
It's an addiction to a degree also, because my general thing is I would buy, like if I needed one of my more modern cars had to be laid up, like a daily driver or something like that, or I needed to pick something up for whatever, I would always just find some classic car and drive that. Like I needed a get around car, so I bought a 75 Buick Riviera 455 console shift.
Perfect.
It got, I think it averaged 11 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, 455.
And,
I would bet.
but it was so much fun to drive. I put new shocks on it. I was gonna put new springs in the rear.
Yeah.
And I had the AC gone through, and I would blow cold air driving through LA in this big old boat, man. It was so much fun. It was just such a smooth, chill ride. It has that GM power steering.
Yep.
But so whenever I've had students of mine that I train, something happens, their car takes a dump, something like that, and I'll give them, here, you're going to drive this Riviera for a while.
Right.
Yeah. And with my fighter Victor, who's fighting in the UFC March 10th, I believe.
Okay.
He got hooked on muscle cars. So now I'm helping him finish. He bought a 70 Cutlass S off of me, and we drove it all the way down from Washington State years ago. And now he's getting that put together to the best of his abilities, and I'm helping him along the way. And other friends of mine.
Great.
It's got a 455 that I had laying around, 455 olds.
Okay.
At my buddy's machine shop, and I just had him do we just put some forged pistons in it, did a 30 over, basically. I think it was only 30 over.
Okay.
Clean up arc bolts and everything in there, stock crank, stock, I believe it's stock rods. We might have went with upgraded rods, just rods and pistons maybe. And aluminum heads, tunnel ram. I had a hydraulic roller cam for this other project of mine, this blown small block olds I put together that I still need to get the car set up and get some carbs on it and get it going. But I had a spare cam from Schneider. It was a mix-up. He sent me one, and he just sends me another, and I'm like, which one do I use? He goes, the second cam. I like that profile better. Okay. They're both 4.7 swap, and just under 600 inch of lift. So I put this in his ride and Victor's ride, and I go, well, with that 113 or 114 lobe center, it'll be real easy to put fuel injection on it.
Yeah.
Plenty of vacuum. And so Phytech hooked us up with their fuel injection stuff, which, it was you that turned me on to Phytech in the first place. And I've got a great relationship out there with those guys. They're really awesome.
They're great.
And I run it on my Pontiac Firebird, made a complete difference in the way that the car handled and drove. And we're doing the same with Victor's car, dual quad setup, and we're going to use their fuel injection pump and all that stuff. And he's going to have this car he can stomp on and light the tires up if he wants to, or he can go stoplight to stoplight with no issues, start right up. Yeah.
Right. Do you get, that's awesome, dude. Is there a similar, you mentor so many people, so many different athletes. Is there a similar satisfaction of mentoring somebody, kind of getting them into classic cars and doing that does it equate a little bit?
Yeah, there is. I love turning people onto the hobby, although I realize I'm also doing them to have a much smaller bank account because of it, but there's going to be a lot of fun. My student, Shayna Baszler, she's in the WWE right now. I got her she needed a car, so I hooked her up with this 73 Olds. With a little old 350 in it, and we put a 204R in that, and she drove that for quite a while. We went to do some stuff with it, but then the project bug hit, and it got left on the wayside, so we had to do something else with it. And now she has a 69, I believe a 69 or 70. I'd have to look at the badging, Mustang Coupe.
Oh, rad. Okay.
Small block Ford in it and everything. And I'm always trying to figure out a way to, I'd like to put like a stroker motor in that car, and maybe upgrade the rear end and do some fuel injection on that and get it all tightened up and finished for her. But being on the road all the time, the WWE, it's pretty tough. And without me around to have her bring it to my buddies' garages so we can wrench on stuff and everything, it's a little difficult. But yeah, if anybody that watches this wants to, fly their flag with a WWE wrestler, you can come talk to me, or a UFC fighter. You can. I got Victor Henry, so I got these two little lost souls out there swimming around in hot rod land. They could use all the help they can get.
That's awesome. Well, so now I just want to touch. You touched on it really kind of early on in the podcast. Talk to me about your booze, because how did that come about? Because that's pretty cool, man. When I first saw it, I was like, no way, he's doing this. Like, how did that come about?
I mean, like, celebrity tie-ins is not a new endeavor, obviously, and selling booze, it's kind of gone in waves, but it's becoming like the thing again,
Right.
But usually they just pick a vodka and they just slap their name on it, or something of that nature. And to be honest, I wasn't looking to do anything for the sake of the celebrity merchandising thing. I am a legitimate whiskey connoisseur and have been for quite a while. And at the time, a few years back, about 4 years maybe now, I was actually talking to different distilleries and trying to see if I could find a place where we could collaborate and get together and produce something.
Yeah.
And this distillery, Sesame Creek, reached out to me, actually, unbeknownst to them that I was even in the market for it. And they hit me up and said, hey, what do you think about doing something with us? And I said, well, you're just up in Oxnard, so I'll take the trip. I'll try your stuff, meet you guys, and let's see if there's something there. And as it turned out, like, we really meshed well. I was really interested in what they were doing. It was very unique because there's not really much in the realm of smoked bourbons. Most smoked whiskey comes in the form of Scotch and smoked with peat. Whereas in this case, they're using mesquite, with the emphasis being that in Scotland, they use peat because they're in Scotland. Well, if you were to make something similar to a smoked whiskey in, let's say, the Southwest US, which California is part of, what would you do? Well, you make a bourbon. That's pretty damn American. And the thing is, if you wanted it smoked, what would you use? Well, what's down in the Southwest? Mesquite. So, mesquite smoked bourbon is kind of like our American Isla. So, we got going with this. I wanted to do a single barrel cask strength product, and the first barrel that I picked, put on market, won gold at San Francisco International Spirits Competition. And we've been kicking ass. Well, hell, their standard blend of Warbringer at 98 proof was winning medals prior to me jumping on board. And we've only increased the medal count since then. Warbringer won gold medal in the pot still division for, was it World Whiskey Awards last year. And our vodka has won best varietal in the world by World Spirits Competition.
Wow. So was there, I mean, as a connoisseur, from a taste perspective, you kind of know what you like, but was there an educational process for you in regards to how the whiskey was made? And do you have input with that? Or do you look at the distillers and say, okay, well, tell me what I need to know. If I'm going to put my name on this, tell me what I need to know.
I don't ever jump into things entirely blind. So I had some rudimentary understanding of distilling, but I wasn't anybody that knew particularly anything well enough that I could do it myself. And I knew a fair amount about whiskey in general, in terms of profiles and how they're made, and in terms of like how Scotch differentiates from bourbon, and how Japanese differentiates from one but is more similar to the other, and all these different things about what goes in to give these types of whiskeys their uniqueness that sets them apart. But whiskey can be quite a complex endeavor, and there's so many different variations you can get with every little change that you make in the process is often going to give you ever a slight or even a really massive difference in terms of how that product's going to come out. So
okay,
as I got into the whole getting actually into the business of being in distilling and whiskey production, and there was a whole lot I had to learn. And in fact, at one point, I just started working at the distillery, doing everything from, from bolts to from nut to bolt, everything you could think of, A to Z of making whiskey. And there's plenty of product that I put out on the market where I had at least my hand in one step of the process or all of it. So I can say I'm an apprentice distiller.
That's cool, dude. That's really cool.
Learning how to taste for what you like is also something that you got to train yourself to do, to be able to pick out certain particular notes and flavors and even things with like the mouthfeel of the liquid and as you drink it, and how these reactions are happening as you enjoy the beverage, from the nose to the palate to everything, right? Anything you can think about that would go into enjoying and or like how this whiskey is presented to you. Okay. And I know it sounds, most people like to, make fun of like the whole sommelier type thing is like this snobby affectation, this incredibly bourgeois practice, which I guess it is in a sense, but I also see it as something that is akin to towards the line of mastery of the thing that you do. And in this case, it's food, right? So understanding what it is you're looking for, how to replicate it, and also why you like it.
Right. That's the key, right? If you like it.
I mean, I tell people to drink the booze any way they want to. You can do anything you want to with my whiskey. I don't care. But it's up to you. However, I always give my little two bits, and that is that I think it's best neat. And if you want it to be smokier, add water. So keep that in mind. If you add ice, it will be smokier. If you want it less smoky, then don't add anything, no water to it whatsoever. And lastly, if you want, let it air for like 5 to 15 minutes, and you'll see that it'll change as it sits there and it's exposed to the open air and oxygen.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, dude, so where can everybody, we're coming up on an hour right now, where can everybody find everything that's going on with Josh Barnett? Where can they find, if they want to try the whiskey? Give me all your stuff.
Well, the easiest thing is just go to joshbarnett.com, and there's links to everything there, including my grappling instructionals from BJJ Fanatics. You can buy my merchandise. You can see what I've been up to. My other projects like Josh Barnett's Bloodsport, my pro wrestling show I produce. Our next show will be March 30th here in LA. The whiskey, there's links to that, which is Sesame Creek Distillery. You can go to warbringerbourbon.com to go direct. And I would suggest to sign up to the email list, as we don't have the largest distribution because, well, we really are a independent craft distillery, and a lot of this is done by hand. I can tell you from my own experiences, we bottle by hand, we're putting the labels on by hand. The way that we do things makes our whiskey what it is, but it also makes it a bit harder to make as much. So we get it where we can get it out there where we can. And when we do have new batches, we will put some aside for direct internet sales. And
that's cool. Okay.
We have a service that we go through that's pretty good about getting it to just about every state in the lower 48 here. So people can order direct, obviously if they're 21 or over, of course.
Sure.
And my Instagram and Twitter is Josh L. Barnett. And I'm always posting whatever I think you're supposed to put up on those things.
Yeah. Doing the social media grind, dude. I know what it's like.
Got to put another reel up. See if I can get some more cash this month.
That's it. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show, Josh. It really is. It's always a treat and a pleasure to talk to you and bullshit for a little while about cars and everything else. You know, I think you're such a credit to the hobby and everything that you're doing now with the whiskey, and obviously as a trainer and a mentor to so many people. Just all great stuff, man. I wish you nothing but the best. It's like I said, always a pleasure, dude. Really, really.
Thank you. It is good to talk to you. I guess now I can blame the whiskey for getting my time divided up into mentoring all these people, spending money on cars, getting other people into other car projects. Like, well, why did you encourage me to do this? Well, I was drinking, you know, so you can't hold it against me now. But yet the drinking was part of my job. So
exactly. Yeah. Right. Professional. All goes together.
Yeah. Well, you know, I also always have to have an obligation to bring something to the Ken Sink party at SEMA whenever that happens. So, yeah.
Well, dude, again, thank you so much, Josh. I will send you all the links and everything as soon as this go up, which is probably next week or so. And that's it, my friend. Otherwise, we will be talking soon.
All right, Beth. Nice talking to you, buddy. Man. Be well.
Be well, Josh. Thank you, sir. Thanks for listening, folks. And again, please subscribe to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast. If you're on Spotify, check us out there. Subscribe to it on iTunes. And if you are going to go to YouTube, make sure you go to the Hot Rod BBQ podcast and hit that subscribe button, and we'll come to you every week.